You now tuned into the hottest podcast in the world, the Stay Woke Podcast, right here on the SonicBreakdown.com.
Welcome to another Stay Woke Podcast, presented by the SonicBreakdown.com. I'm D-Ray Brinson, and today's topic for this episode is going to be about the top 10 albums. I recently just put a top 10, two articles, one for the top 10 non-rap category, and then one for the top 10 rap category. And in the rap category, I also listed about 5 honorable mention albums that I really had a hard time taking off the list, but didn't quite deserve that spot. But they did deserve an honorable mention. So let's begin it off with, let's go with the non-rap category. The non-rap category, there was a lot of very, very good albums this year that came out. Let's start with 10 and we'll work our way up to 1. Number 10 is Cataranda with 99.9%. I found this album very late in the year, but it has a very infectious, upbeat feel. Production is very upbeat. Is the best explanation for it. But it does have essence of hip hop and R&B in it, with an electronic dance kind of feel. Just the energy that it's giving off of. So that was a really good album. I really like the song that he did with Sid. That was a really good album. Number 9 was Drum, Big Baby Drum. This is his debut album, or his debut studio album, I should say. And it was a very good album. One of the standout tracks was Wi-Fi. I just love that track with Erykah Badu. Anytime you can get Erykah Badu on the track, it's usually going to be a hit. I thought that was a very good album. I just also like the feel of the album, especially in the beginning, where it's about get it yourself and basically very motivational, but still in that kind of R&B realm. Some of the tracks I didn't like too much would be Broccoli with Lil Yachty. That just it didn't really resonate with me. The number 8, we'll say, then the number 8 album is Bruno Mars 24 Karat. I thought that was a very good project, and it was very ambitious of him to take on that 90s R&B feel and make it authentic and not corny. Some of the tracks to me are very, very close to being on that corny edge, but he just keeps it right above the intolerable corny level. If you could say that. There is a lot of tracks on there that, again, like I said, that have the 90s feel, that a New Edition, that Candy Rain, Boyz II Men, So For Real, that kind of feel is definitely present on that album. I'll definitely check that album out if you like that type of feeling. You're feeling like you're missing that in music today. The next album is Maxwell's Black Summer Night. I've been really, really anticipating this album because I really liked his first album, Black Summer's Night, because it's supposed to be a trilogy. Is from what I was when I first heard the first album, Black Summer's Night, which Black was the darker aspect of it, and then Summer is a lighter feel, and then Night is supposed to be more of the sexual of a feel is what I believe is supposed to be the idea behind this 3 albums. We're finally on the second album, Summer, and it lived up. I will say this though, I don't listen to it as much as I do Black Summer's Night, the first album, just because I tend to go to the darker, more gloomier production, and that was definitely felt on that album, as well as it had our boy Scooter on the saxophone, so that resonated with me as another Morehouse man. I wanted to support that, and plus the saxophone on that album it was pretty great. So definitely check that first album out, Black Summer's Night, and then also cop the second one, Black Summer's Night, with Summer as the capital. It's very well worth it. Lake by the Ocean, that's a very good track that just it has an interesting feel that continues and makes you want to continue to listen to it. So that is an album I would definitely pick up. Frank Ocean, he dropped an album kind of, it felt like out of nowhere, but we've been waiting for this album for a very long time. I think it was 4 years since his last album, Channel Orange. Blonde or Blondie, depending on, I guess, the cover that you get, if it was with the E or without the E, which I thought it was a very interesting commentary on the masculine, feminine aspect that permeates our society, even to the aspect that we tend not to even question or think about, that just little changes does determine what's masculine, what's feminine. And now with transgender becoming more open and accepted, I think people are seeing that, those sexual boundaries or the sexual lines of male and feminine are not as well defined or shouldn't be as well defined as we previously believed. And he touches on that throughout this album. Nike, very good song. It's for me, for this album, the first half of the album I enjoyed a lot better than the second half. So it wasn't quite complete for me to just continually go back. And so that's why I didn't make it higher on the list. Solange comes in at number 5 with A Seat at the Table. I thought this was a very well done project, as I stated prior on previous podcasts. This album also was my first introduction to one. I won't say my first introduction to Solange, but my first complete introduction to a complete album by her. I heard singles, I heard songs, I heard things on the radio, but I never completely sat down and listened to a complete album. So this was an experience, and a rather enjoyable experience of listening to her album. I really liked the thought that she puts into the compilation. It was a complete project. The interludes fit in perfectly. I really, really enjoyed the interviews with Master P and the insight that he was bringing. And I felt it was enlightening and refreshing to see somebody that, based on appearances, you would determine or you would think is a thug or somebody that that wouldn't add value as in depth in a conversation, that by listening to this, is presenting in a format that you listen to him without seeing him, and you understand that he is dropping some knowledge, he is dropping some inspiration, that if it was said from somebody else in a different appearance, it would be received differently. But the fact that it was coming from Master P, some people might be turned off if it was presented in a different light. I thought that was very, very smart of her to do that, as well as just the title itself, A Seat at the Table. Like, we just want to be there, be present. I thought it was very thoughtful, very well done, and the production and the songwriting and her singing ability was very well done. So I will tip my hat off to Solange on that one. And I know the Beehive's gonna be mad at me, but so far Beyonce hasn't made the list. We'll see if she makes a 1 through 4. But number 4, apparently she's not number 4. Number 4 is Malibu. That came out very early in the year, if I recall. I believe it came out like in February or March, and that album was so sweet. It was so nice. It was so refreshing. It just felt, it was an enjoyable listen. You felt good listening to it. You felt ready to go, it just was a very uplifting feeling, type of sound. The warm feeling, the just that feeling. It felt like Malibu. It felt happy, refreshing. So that was, and I only heard about Anderson .Paak on Dr. Dre's Compton album. So this was my second introduction to him, and it wasn't a disappointment. As F and Maddie stated on the last podcast, if you haven't heard it, please check it out. For him, he put this maybe as in the album of the year for him. So moving on to number 3 is an album that I did a review on earlier this year. And again, it was the production, I'll say the evolution in the production, as well as the sophistication in the production, was something new that I won't say something new, but something I didn't expect off of this album. And so coming into number 3, it's Rihanna with Anti. Like I said, the production was elevated, sophisticated, well done, as well as Rihanna provided what's the word I'm looking for? Showed growth in her vocal abilities and understanding her voice. That's what it felt like to me, that she understood her voice and understood the ranges and evolution or potential that she has and how to rein that in, as well as develop control better than she has, that I've witnessed in the previous albums. Coming in at number 2 would be No Worries, Yes Lord. That was a wonderful, wonderful project. I don't even know how I heard about it. I just found it and didn't stop playing it since. As F and Maddie said on the previous album, HAN is one of the standout tracks. Cutlass, for me, I love that Cutlass, that beat. It's infectious for me. And it did beat Anderson .Paak's Malibu. It was a hard call though between those two, to which one to put higher. But I just felt like No Worries, and maybe it's because it came out later, and I've kind of exhausted Malibu, but I still tend to go back to Malibu very often. But Yes Lord, that album is very good. I hope that they continue to do projects together, him and No Worries and Anderson .Paak. And We are now at number one. Round of applause, please. But number one is, if you follow me on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, you'll probably have a pretty good guess at what this album is going to be. Or if you listen to the last podcast, you have a good idea of what this album is going to be. And it is Childish Gambino, Awaken My Love. I thought this album was a work of art. I really, really, really enjoy this album. It touched on my old school sensibilities with the Sly and the Family Stones sound. There was, like I said in the review, please check out the review that's on the sonicbreakdown.com under the breakdown page to get really more in depth of what I had to say about this album. But it has some Prince, it has some Jimi Hendrix, it has some Rick James feel, it has some George Clinton, it has some Sly and the Family Stones. It has all of that wrapped up in it. It has socially conscious content, but that's not overbearing and too preachy. It has more warm, endearing tracks like Baby Boy, where he's talking about his son. It has happy, or not, I won't say happy, but more upbeat, like Have Some Fun. These are just, and Zombie and Terrified. Woo, man, oh man, I love those two tracks. Those are two of my favorite tracks on the album. Boogeyman, I really enjoy as well as the commentary on police, just the stigma that society, some people in society, which I just experienced actually today, of people assuming or just being afraid of you just because of your skin. And in that, one of the lines that stuck out in Boogeyman is, "How are you afraid of me when you got the gun?" Basically saying that the police are afraid of us because of our skin, but if you take out skin color and you just put in the situation, somebody with the gun and somebody without the gun, the person with the gun should not be more afraid than the person without the gun. And he touches on that in a very interesting and artistic manner, as well as the app Pathos that he came out with it, that gave you an immersive experience of a concert where you're going to get a 3D view, the visuals and the colors and everything blended together perfectly, because when you, like I said, when you listen to this album, it's so warm. It's a warm and inviting feeling that was gained, or that you used to see back in the 70s and 80s, that is hard to see now. But Childish Gambino proved that it can be done. So that was our top 10 non-rap albums of 2016. Let's go down to the rap category. So the top 10 rap albums, and I'll go from 10 to 1. I'll do this one a little bit faster. Number 10, it's a late entry. It's Kid Cudi, Passion, Pain, and Demon Slaying. I really like that album in the aspect that it is dark and depressing. It is, to me, it's more reminiscent of the older Kid Cudi that loved with Man on the Moon, and Man on the Moon is actually what I'm thinking of particularly. It has that more of a feel. But as Matt said, I can understand everybody not feeling that dark and depressing, because it does have to be set at a certain time. You just can't put that on, for me, well, at least for me, I can't put that on at any time. But there are tracks that are lighter and more hopeful, like the old track with Pharrell, Surfing. I really do like the track with Willow Smith, Rose Golden. That was very unexpected, how much I enjoyed how well they worked together. Number 9 is Mick Jenkins, The Healing Component. As if you know and you followed me for a while, I've been a big Mick Jenkins fan since The Waters. I still praise that album to this day. I think it's a very well conceptual album. I really just enjoy that album, and I can play it almost anytime, anywhere, and I'm fine. The album that came after that was The Waves. I did like that album as well, but I didn't like it as much as The Waves. Nowhere near as much as The Waves. This album I like a lot better than I did Waves, but it's still not as good as The Waters. I do like the concept of love, of him spreading love, and then he's saying that was what Jesus and basically what the Bible and God and what they try to preach to us about everything boils down to love and spreading that love. Because when you spread that love, you end up doing all the positive things that they say in the Bible, respecting your neighbors, thou shalt not kill. Those things, when you spread love, everything else comes to fruition. So I felt that was a very good concept, as well as the way that he broke the album down, explaining the concept. Because it can be a more evolved, I won't say evolved, but a more difficult, complex concept to get without the explanation. Number 8 is Mac Miller with the Divine Feminine, where he really stands up for women in this album in an interesting approach. It's a more soft, gentler Mac Miller than I would assume that we're used to, or that at least I'm used to. And he approaches it from the perspective of if God was a woman, and would that change how we're acting and how we treat them and how we talk to them? But he goes in it in a softer approach that again was interesting and I rather enjoyed. I really enjoyed the track with CeeLo, the track with Bilal, the track with Kendrick. God is fair, sex is nasty, and the juxtaposition that they're going with in that song is interesting, and the juxtaposition that it is with Kendrick's voice versus Mac Miller's, and the soft versus the hard, the slower cadence versus the more chopped up cadence. I liked a lot. Number 7 is Boss Too High to Riot. I played this album a lot, so that's why it made it so high on my list. It is a album that has high replayability for me. I like the content. I like the production. You can definitely tell that he's a Dreamville artist, but he does not sound like J. Cole. What else I'll say that is, and I'm not saying that in a bad way that he should sound like J. Cole. I'm saying it in a good way that he stands out on his own, even though he's writing over beats and production that I could see J. Cole using or picking up for himself. So I do like that. And it was my first time really having an introduction to him, and the content was clear, and I felt he did provide some introspection as well. One of the tracks that initially got me onto it was the single Night Job. We did do a podcast on this album as well as I did so we did a podcast on it early in the year, so check that out if you didn't. Number 6 is Schoolboy Q, Blank Face. I really like Blank Face. I was anticipating this album for a long time, and I wasn't disappointed. I like the fact that he gives you that gangster shit, but he also has thought about it. It also has an interesting purpose with this album, and the fact that he chose more different type of instrumentals, like the song with Candace Play. I would not expect that from Schoolboy Q, but he rocked it though. Toki Knows Too, that's a standout track, of course. That part with Kanye. I do really like the Black Hippie remix more than I do the album version. I just really like the Black Hippie version, and I like his last verse, and I like the idea that he states, which I also stated on the podcast that we did about this Blank Face album, about the concept of the people watching Alton Sterling get shot and just videotape it, and how he's saying you wouldn't do that in the hood. So I definitely say check that out and just think about what he's saying on that last verse in particular. Number 5, I had no choice. A Tribe Called Quest, man. We've been waiting, and we finally got it. They didn't disappoint. I was really excited to hear them kind of pass the torch to like J. Cole, Kendrick, Earl Sweatshirt, just them saying that and letting the real hip hop heads out there that might not know these artists that keep on saying, hip hop's dead, or there's no real good lyricists, there's no MCs nowadays, that, A Tribe Called Quest, a group that is universally respected in hip hop culture, that everybody else realizes that these young cats out here, and I won't even say that young cats because, they're not much younger than me. Well, some of them. But that there are cats out here that are actually paying attention to the words, paying attention to the composition, doing their homework, really studying and trying to perfect the craft. So I thought that was very, very important for them to touch on, and I appreciated it. As well as the fact that they stuck to the A Tribe Called Quest. It felt like they never fell off. This album felt like it could have came out right after their last one. Just the type of production, even though the production sounds more old school, it still has a modern feel to it, as well as the content. Man, come on now. It's A Tribe Called Quest. The content is always there. From the tracks to Donald, where they are talking about social commentary regarding the election and the bigotry, or the bigotry-led comments from Trump. So they touch on a lot of things from there, as well as ways that they believe we should try to affect some change. So that definitely made it. And it was also a little bit sad is the fact that Five Dog isn't here to see the success and kind of relish in it. The number 4 is Run the Jewels. And if you know, I've liked Run the Jewels 1 and Run the Jewels 2. So Run the Jewels 3 touches on all of that. And so, yeah, Run the Jewels has been an album, or has been a group that I like. Killer Mike, LP, and Run the Jewels 3 doesn't disappoint. It came out very late in the year. If it came out, I believe, Christmas. And I've been rocking that album for a minute since it came out. I like everything on the album. I can play the album front to back. The production, LP stepped it up again. Killer Mike and LP killed it lyrically. I love the way that they go back and forth the same way, given that hip hop, that old school hip hop, but with current content. So number 3, we have Chance the Rapper, The Coloring Book. Chance has had a hell of a year, man. He's had a hell of a year. This Coloring Book album was really, really good. It came out early in the year and I still listen to it. I go back to it often, and it has a different feel than most projects. It is uplifting. It is very, I won't say churchy, but spiritually led. He doesn't hide his spirituality. He doesn't hide his religion, but he doesn't seem overbearing as well. I do notice myself catching a lot more of the religious tones and undertones on this album than I probably would want to notice. I would like it a little bit to be more smooth, where it's not as noticeable. That's just my preference. But I think this was a very good album, as evidence that it made the top 3. And I just really like Chance the Rapper style. I like the fact that he does his own thing and that he's willing to take the risk and put out his artistic vision in the way that he wants to put it out. Number 2 is Rhapsody. I'm not going to spend much time on this because if you guys know, I love me some Rhapsody, man. I've constantly praised all of her albums since we started the sonicbreakdown.com as well as the Stay Woke podcast. Last year, she was, I believe, number 3 or number 4 on the list, or number 4 on my top 10 list. And this year she's 2. Crown was a late entry again as well, but she hits on all cylinders. This album to me is, and I don't want to compare it to Kendrick, but I'm going to compare her in this regard, is that she's talking to not just to Black people, but to minorities and empowering them, not just telling them, this is the things that are going on, the things that we see that is wrong, but ways to get through it and to persevere with it. So I can't say enough about that album. And it was really, really tough for me to put her at number 2, but the number 1 barely edged her out. And the number 1 album is J. Cole, For Your Eyes Only. I just thought it was a very well done project. The production is excellent. I just like the mature quality that he has to it. The storytelling is superb. The title track, For Your Eyes Only, is a wonderful, I would say it's a wonderful story, even though that it is a sad story. It's told in a manner that makes you really connect and resonate. Even if you haven't been in a similar situation, you understand the loss and the pain, as well as the love that a father can have for a daughter, or that a parent can have for their child. And that's universal. So that's the top 10 list. I just want to quickly go over the honorable mentions. We got Vic Mensa, There's a Lot Going On. T.I., Us or Else, The Letter to the System. Logic, Bobby Tarantino. That, I really like that album, but it's kind of a mixtape, so I couldn't have it put in the top 10. Kendrick's Untitled Unmastered. The reason for that is it was a very good album, but it's basically a music dump. I can't put that over more complete conceptual albums for me. And then the last one is No Name Telephone. That was a really, really hard album not to put on the list. I really enjoy that album. I think No Name has a very sweet voice. Is very pleasing to the ear as well. And she has it's a nice feeling that you get from her voice. Not that you don't get that with other female artists, but it's a nice, it's really hard to explain, but it's a comforting voice in that regard. So it's pleasant to hear. But that's my list. So check out thesonicbreakdown.com for more. And again, thank you for listening to the Stay Woke podcast. We appreciate it all. And our motto, live, listen to some great music, and above all, love more. And we out.